If everyone could take their seats, we have quorum. Should I go ahead and start? Maybe make like a minute. Can't see when I look up from this.
I know.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I guess we'll look here and then over there.
I think it's my
This
glasses.
is the first time they asked me that question. Let me check.
What does he need?
The Wi-Fi? SDG guest.
And it's asking me for a guest account and who I'm visiting.
Asking for your email and your name, Mario. Yeah.
All right, Mario, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, everyone. Good morning, almost afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the new space here at West. I will call the April 3rd Shoreline Preservation Working Group to order at 11:35. And first, I would like to ask our interpreters to explain how to access interpretation.
Good morning. Announcement for from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting scrolls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through Zoom, mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to hear the original Spanish in the background. Headsets are available for the interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer el uso de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, 3 puntos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el teléfono, por favor, seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares para el servicio de interpretación si se encuentra en la sala de reunión. Favor de pedir los auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right. And now I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay Duigueño, the Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Kumeyaay. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in doing the injustices of the past. And now, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we jump into our meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that today's Shoreline Preservation Working Group meeting is the very first public meeting being held at West. And I would first like to ask our clerk if we have quorum.
We have a quorum, Chair.
All right, and I understand we have someone attending remotely.
Yes, we had an advisory member, Ron Flick, attending remotely. Need to ask a few questions of Mr. Flick before we move on. Mr. Flick, could you please confirm with us that you're able to leave your camera on throughout the course of the meeting?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. And is there anybody over the age of 18 in the room with you? And if so, could you please state their relationship to you?
Not at the moment, but my daughter will be back from shopping. She's taking care of me soon.
Thank you. Could you briefly describe the reason for your remote participation this morning without disclosing any medical information?
Well, it is medical, and I'm unable to travel to the meeting.
Thank you. That does qualify for remote participation, so we can go ahead and back to you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Michael. And we are fortunate to have Mario Orso here today to welcome you. Take it away, Mario.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think the chair stole the thunder. It's an exciting day today for us here at SANDAG. You are the participants at the very, very first meeting that we have here at West, at our new building. We no longer are in 401B, no employees are there. Next week, all our employees will be starting to report here. We had the majority of our employees working remotely for almost a month and a half while we were moving and decommissioning the other building. So it is a very exciting time to be here. It also, I'm celebrating, I think, my 8.5 month with SANDAG, or 9.5 month. And it also, moving here, it also indicates another chapter in the agency. The prior building, I think we were there since 1988. So it was quite a bit of time. So it's a pretty cool piece of information and the emotions of having this big, this very first meeting. So welcome, and hopefully we have a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So since it is our first day, we probably need to make sure that everybody gets really close to the microphone so we can work out the acoustics and all that. So, all right, let's move on to the first item, and it's a non-agenda public and member comments. And after the public comments, I would like, since we have so many new members, I'd like to go around the working group and have a quick introduction. But first, Michael, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
We do, but before we do that, Chair, I forgot to call roll call, given that there's virtual participation. We do need to do a roll call vote. Roll call attendance hand raise. So if I can go down the list here, and if you're present, primary members, just go ahead and say here in the microphone. City of Imperial Beach,
Present.
City of Del Mar, absent. City of Carlsbad, absent. City of Chula Vista,
I'm here.
City of Coronado,
Here.
City of Encinitas,
Here.
City of National City,
Present.
City of Oceanside,
Present.
City of San Diego, absent. City of Solana Beach,
Present?
County of San Diego, absent. Port of San Diego, U.S. Navy, absent. All right, going into the public comment, Chair, if that's okay with you. All right, going right, our first slip we received is from Jeff Turner.
Very good. And today, do we have, how many public speakers do we have on this?
Currently, we only have one non-agenda public speaker.
All right, so we'll go ahead and do 3 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Turner. I'm with Vulcan Materials Company. We're a nation-leading supplier of construction aggregates and materials and downstream materials such as asphalt and concrete. We're also a longstanding member of the construction community here in San Diego, supplying the construction industry. I'm here today because one of the over 400 facilities that we operate is a quarry that is on Vancouver Island in British Columbia that we deliver material, including sand, in large volumes to our markets in California, San Francisco Bay, Long Beach, and we're starting an initial relationship, including the Port of San Diego. But we produce and have large volumes of sand that appears to be a really good match potentially for beach replenishment. We're currently holding 3+ million yards of sand in our quarry in British Columbia, and we deliver it by Panamax-sized vessels that we offload with a conveyance system, so it provides some unique opportunities and solutions for beach replenishment. I brought some sample jars of the material if you'd like to take a look at it, and I also put together a PDF version of a presentation that gives you a little bit more information about the material and how it's delivered into the market. So just wanted to say thank you and put it on the table.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right, so let's go around really quickly and just introduce ourselves. I'll go first. My name's Christy Becker. I'm a retired attorney. I'm serving my second term for the city of Solana Beach and rotated into the deputy mayor position this year. So who would like to go next? Eric.
Sure, my name is Eric Joyce. I'm Deputy Mayor of Oceanside. I am happy to have served on this last year. It is extremely informative, and I'm also a body surfer, so we want to make sure there's sand out there because it's a lot harder landing when there's not. So I'll pass it down to Imperial Beach.
I'm Carol Seabury, born and raised Imperial Beach, married to a Navy SEAL, and we spent all of our time in the water, so beach is very important to us. Thank you.
Good morning, Michael Nzunza, City Council, Chula Vista. Born and raised in my city. I spent years as both a county and a Chula Vista commissioner, and I served as Greg Cox's district director in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I'm happy to be here.
Good morning, afternoon, everybody. Jose Rodriguez, council member from the city of National City. Glad to be serving on this committee this year once again.
Good morning. My name is Esther Sanchez, mayor for the city of Oceanside. Born and raised in Oceanside, where my dad also was raised. Been on the shoreline preservation for about 15 or so years, on and off, mostly on, even when it wasn't as popular as it is now to be worried about our shoreline. And happy to be here as the alternate.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Reese Allen. I'm the Climate Adaptation Program Manager at Caltrans, District 11. I manage a lot of our coastal feasibility studies for things like sea level rise and storm surge. So great to see everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Mitch Silverstein, San Diego County Policy Manager for Surfrider Foundation. Our mission is to protect and enjoy the world's ocean, waves, and beaches for all people. So I'm honored to be a community advisor, I think is my title, on this working group to just make sure that there's a community voice in the room as well for protecting our beaches.
Good morning, everyone. Dan Malcolm with the Port of San Diego. I've been a port commissioner for 15 years. Before that, decades ago, I was a council member for Imperial Beach. And in that role, I was on this board when it was called the Shoreline Erosion Committee. And we did what we refer to as Beach Replenishment 1. I was also on the board for Beach Replenishment 2. And as a former lifeguard and a longtime surfer, I'm very passionate about our beaches and happy to be here.
Good morning, this afternoon. Thank you so much. My name is Amy Stewart. I'm with the City of Coronado, and I'm newly elected and just really pleased to be here. I have a background in environmental education. I was a teacher prior to becoming a council member. And for the last 6 years, I founded and ran an environmental organization, and we're very interested in sea level rise and preservation of our ocean, of our beaches and oceans. Thank you.
Yeah, Bruce Ehlers, mayor in the city of Encinitas. I'm a new mayor there, but I was on council for 2 years. And prior to that, I was planning commission twice, spread over 23 years. So been involved with Encinitas for quite a while, 41-year resident, and really happy to be here. So.
Very good. Thank you. And I'll turn it up to Dr. Flick.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me remotely. Sorry, I can't be there in person. I'm a coastal oceanographer at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, excuse me, where I've been since 1970. You can do the arithmetic on that. And I was the representative for the California Department, now Division of Boating and Waterways, since 1984 to the SANDAG Board Committee, and now the Scripps representative representing able to provide information about the coast. I've done a lot of studies on sea level rise, coastal erosion, effects of development, wave science, and the like. Everybody knows Adam Young by now. He was one of my postdocs, just to give you an example. All right, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Happy to have all of you here. All right, let's go on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is approval of the December 5th, 2024 meeting minutes. And Michael, do we have any public comments on this item?
We have no public comment on this item, Chair.
Any member comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move approval.
Approval by Mr. Joyce. Second by Mr. Rodriguez. And can we call for the roll?
City of Imperial Beach,
Present.
for vote, just voting, okay, present.
Yeah. Yes or no, or abstain? Yes, no, or abstain for the minutes.
You know, I wasn't here for that meeting, so am I able to still approve them?
You are if you've read through them and approve of them.
Okay, then I would move that motion forward.
Thank you.
City of Del Mar is absent. City of Carlsbad is absent. City of Chula Vista,
Yes.
City of Coronado,
Yes.
City of Encinitas,
Yes.
City of National City,
Aye.
City of Oceanside,
Yes.
City of San Diego is absent. City of Solana Beach,
Yes.
County of San Diego, absent. Port of San Diego,
Yes.
U.S. Navy is absent. The motion passes unanimously with those members present.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to our reports. Our first report is the Shoreline Management Program 101, and Keith Greer will present an overview of SANDAG's Regional Shoreline Management Program, its accomplishments, and next steps. You're up, Keith.
Well, welcome everybody. It's kind of new to be in this seat looking out at you. I'm used to the old 401 B Street, but this is our new digs. I hope you enjoy them. We have a lot of new members today on our working group. So one of the things we want to do is to kind of tell you what we've been working on, what this group has accomplished in the past, why it was formed, and kind of your role in the SANDAG process. So we're calling that the Shoreline Management Program 101. After my presentation, Ms. Courtney Becker, who's our program manager for this area, will be talking about a specific project and giving you details on the Regional Beach Stand 3 project. So we're excited about that, and we have a lot more information to share with you today. And then final, the presentation will have the days from the city of Oceanside, and they'll be talking about something called Re-Beach. And they have been making a lot of progress up in Oceanside, and we came today to have them present. So this program is the oldest program working group at SANDAG. It's from the 1980s. So it has a long history. I think Mayor Sanchez was talking about her 15 years of service here, so thank you. 20 years. Thank you very much. Dr. Flick, who's remote today, has probably been here since the beginning. So we have a lot of history and a lot of people who have provided input along the way. So the beaches are important. You all know that. You all call them coastal communities, but they're also economically important. So you see the 22 million visitors we have at our beaches. They represent $2.4 billion of economic revenue to the region. So beaches are more than just a place for recreation. They are also an economic driver. There was a chamber study done a couple of years ago and asked people, why are you visiting San Diego? And of course, people came for the zoo or for Legoland, but one of their top rates was come to the beaches. So the beaches are important, and the Shoreline Preservation Working Group has a mission to set out to look at how we preserve and maintain those beaches over time. So why was it created? So back in the 1980s, there was a real strong El Nino storm, the strongest on record, and it caused millions of dollars of damage in San Diego, billions on the state. We had loss of housing, we had infrastructure impacts, we had the Crystal Pier was damaged. Up north of us, we had Seal Beach Pier was actually broken in half. So a super strong El Nino storm caused a lot of damage. And there was concern that if we didn't do something about protecting these infrastructures, these housing, this situation, we'll have more of the problems that we see in the future. So the Shoreline Preservation Working Group was formed. And one of the things it noted as after the El Nino storms, there was a proliferation of seawalls. So a person wanted to protect their home and they put up a seawall. And then the person who didn't have a seawall also had to put up a seawall because it transferred the power next door. So you had this proliferation of people wanting to put seawalls up. Well, seawalls do a lot of things for protection, but they also trap the sand from behind. So the beaches were starting to get eroded. And so SANDAG said, you know, let's bring together the jurisdictions around the coastal area and come up with some policies. What should be the policies of the region for shoreline preservation? So over the years, we have developed 4 kind of key policy documents. The first one back in 1993 was the Shoreline Preservation Strategy. And what it envisioned was similar to how you've seen beaches in Coronado or up in the South Bay area of LA, which is to do a massive sand nourishment. So put the sand out there once and treat it like infrastructure so that it's on a continually maintenance cycle. So the maintenance it envisioned what we do 30 million cubic yards of sand at one time, and then we maintain it over the years of about 500,000 per year. That was the envisionment in 1993. I'll talk about what we've done. We haven't come even close to that, but we'll talk about what we will be doing as well in the next steps. Also, we came back in 2001, we came up with, you keep sand on the beach, you also want to retain it longer. And so there was a shoreline retention strategy. We had opportunistic sand strategy, which was done in 2008. And then finally, in 2009, we came up with a comprehensive regional sand management strategy for the region. So all these policy documents are what SANDAG kind of brings to you as a Shoreline Preservation Working Group for how we actually accomplish the work that you want us to do. So what are we currently working on? So this is an exciting time to be on the Shoreline Preservation Working Group because a lot of things have been kicked off a couple of years ago and are starting to hit a pace. I think Deputy Mayor Joyce will can attest to that. He's seen a lot of things that we started up a couple of years ago and now we're starting to hit full pace. So one of the things we're working on is the continuation of a regional monitoring strategy. We are very fortunate that we have, since the 1990s, continued biannual monitoring of the beaches and the nearshore sand placement. So I would say, honestly, we probably have the best understanding of how sand moves in the region of any other region in both the United States and who knows, maybe the world. We are fortunate to have Scripps Institute of Oceanography with us. They are one of your advisory members. We are fortunate enough to have them in our backyard actually tracking a lot of sand. So twice a year, the jurisdictions, you guys jointly fund a monitoring program to say where the sand is now, where is it moving, and what areas are potentially erosional hotspots. All those are done, we give you reports of the Shoreline Preservation Working Group, and they're made available to your member agencies. So monitoring is just one way of protecting the ocean or shoreline area. So if you just monitor it and don't do anything, it doesn't really help you, right? So based upon the monitoring program, it determines areas of erosion and what could be done to maintain sand in those areas of erosion. So the shoreline monitoring then leads us to take action. SANDAG, on behalf of the coastal jurisdictions here in the region, have done 2 regional beach nourishment projects, one in 2001 and the other in 2012. We've taken sand from offshore, which doesn't normally get back on shore, called the depths of closure. And that sand helps build up the beaches. This is a process that's really prolific back in the East Coast, but we were the first region in the West Coast to do this. And now we know beaches up in Orange County and up in LA County and Santa Barbara are also kind of following suit. So that process is called beach nourishment. And so we've done 2 beach nourishment projects. The first one was in 2001 for 2.2 million cubic yards. And the other one in 2012 was 1.4 million cubic yards. So if you remember, I said 30 million cubic yards was the goal for the shoreline preservation strategy. We haven't done nearly that much. And there's reasons why. One is the environmental reasons. You can't just put that much sand and not expect an environmental impact. The other one is cost. These are very expensive projects, as you'll see. But based upon those efforts, they are now seen as a very viable, socially acceptable, and desirable way of maintaining your beaches out there. And we expect to do more. So I mentioned the shoreline monitoring program. Based upon that program, it's been 12 years, I think 13 years now, since the last regional beach sand project. And the time is ripe to do another regional beach sand project. So we kicked that off about 1.5 years ago. The jurisdictions asked SANDAG to come together and say, what will it take to do another beach sand project? So we're calling the next one Regional Beach Sand 3. Ms. Becker will talk more about that in next presentation. But it consists of 3 parts. Phase 1 is all the feasibility, planning, economic analysis to make sure that the project's ready. And I'm happy to say that you're here today that is almost done. We'll be completed with phase 1 this June, and you'll all have copies of the reports sent out to you after this meeting. So after phase 1, you actually need to do the engineering and environmental. And that is what we are currently moving into. We are seeking grant funds from the state and the federal government to fund phase 2. And then finally, phase 2 is the big lift. That's construction. We don't have the construction funds yet, but that's a future phase that we'll be working on with this committee to look at seeking federal and state funds for that. And again, Courtney will talk more about Regional Beach Sand 3 project in depth, and you'll all be getting a report later on this afternoon. So the other thing we did is last year we created a technical task force. So a technical task force is those people who roll up their sleeves, and scientists and the coastal managers and those kind of wonky people like myself get into a room and talk about what do we know about sand in the region? What do we know where the sand's moving? And what recommendations would that task force make to this group for moving the program forward? So we presented this item in September. I gave a presentation on what the technical task force came up with in terms of next steps for the regional shoreline protection program. So the first item was to take a look at all 4 of those documents which I presented. Some of them are getting really dated. Some of them the science has advanced. And to take those and put them into one comprehensive updated policy document. So I'm happy to say we'll be working on that starting in the fiscal year. We'll be taking all 4 of those documents, giving them a refresh, updating them, and coming back to you with that revised updated policy. The other thing they mentioned was we should have a Southern California advisory committee to help us out. What is the best science? What's the best management technique? So we'll be forming that as we help go forward with those policy updates, and then we'll have that group meet, and people like Scripps Institutionography will help us craft those new policies and understand the gaps of what we don't know. We've had a continuation of the Regional Shoreline Monitoring Program was requested, and we're actually doing that right now. We're going to be seeking funding this year to take that information which exists in static reports, so paper reports, and making it online. Taking all that 28 years worth of data and making it part of our digital data open portal, which is something that SANDAG has, but we haven't converted the data that we have right now in reports for this program into that data portal. So that's kind of exciting because that way you'll be able to get access 24/7 to information and look at some trends over time without having to go back through, 28 years of reports. So that was a recommendation we're going to have as part of our work plan as well for the next fiscal year. And finally, there is a desire by the region to update our SCOOP program. So a SCOOP program is a stand compatible opportunistic use program, or SCOOP. And what it is when a jurisdiction has a developer that has good quality sand, or when SANDAG's dredging out a lagoon and has good quality sand, we can place that on the beach in a fast, easy way through the scoop permit. We don't have to go through the Coastal Commission, Army Corps, and have all those lengthy permit process. We go through an expedited process called scoop. The way the scoop was developed over the years was each of your jurisdictions had their own scoop permit. And we think that doesn't make sense at all to us. So what is part of our work program for next year, we're going to try to take those and create one regional permit, which you all can use, and it will be good for the San Diego County region. Now, this is an idea that I stole from our folks in Orange County who are here today, and from our LA County folks which are starting. We're all kind of trying to do our own regional scoop permits to make things much easier for using SAN where it's available. So that's the kind of big picture of where we're headed with the regional program. We're going to be updating our policy documents, bringing our technical task force members from like Scripps to help us with that. We're going to be taking existing data coming from the monitoring program on those 28 years of historic data, putting them in an open data portal. And we're going to be taking a look at our scoop program and making it more easy to use and more refined and elegant for you guys so you don't have to keep updating your own scoops at a jurisdictional level. So that's what we have presented to you in September. We're also going to be working on the Regional Beach Sand 3 project, which Courtney is going to be talking about. And finally, we have gotten together this last year and crafted something called the Southern California Sand Collaborative, SCSC. And what this is the counterparts in Orange County, San Diego County, LA County, Santa Barbara, and Ventura have gotten together and said, how do we work together? How do we leverage funding opportunities? How do we kind of get on the same page of best management practices? And so that's an initial group called the Southern California Sand Collaborative, which we're just kicking off. And so I'll have that group come and present to you at a future meeting. But we're excited about it and has a lot of potential to leverage funding out there. So with that, I'm going to close the charter. So let me just finish up by talking about what this group works on and who you report to. So you're a working group. So you're part of the legislative body of the SANDAG board. Your reporting structure is up to the regional planning committee. So your recommendations that you make here go to the regional planning committee, which then get recommended to the SANDAG board. Your charter is everything involving shoreline preservation. So beach nourishment, sand protection, infrastructure protection along the ocean, sea level rise, even water quality. A couple of years ago, we actually brought the Tijuana sewage issue to this group and we had a meeting down in Imperial Beach. So you deal with all things that touch the ocean. You meet quarterly on this Thursday at 11:30, and you're comprised of all the 8 coastal jurisdictions. Those are the jurisdictions that are on the coast. But because sea level rise also affects our bay cities, it includes the bayfront cities. So Chula Vista and National City are also on your group. You're made up of advisors. The county of San Diego is also included, the U.S. Navy and the port. So all the people who touch the ocean. And you have advisory members, and there's 16 of them. I mentioned a couple. We have Surfrider here. We have Caltrans here today. We have Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and several others that represent both communities, coastal commission, regulatory agencies, state parks, and they periodically attend as advisory members to your group. So with that, I'm going to close out the presentation and answer any big picture questions you have on the Shoreline Preservation Working Group or Shoreline 101.
Hey, thank you, Keith. That was a great overview. First, Michael, do we have any public comments?
We have no in-person public comments, no public comments at all, actually.
Oh, very good. Any member comments, questions? It was so thorough. Nobody has any questions? Oh, very good.
So the next quarterly meeting would be in August on the first Thursday?
So it would be in June. This is a special meeting right now.
Okay,
I apologize. We had some logistics last month. We were in transit. So we welcome you to a special meeting today. Courtney, do you have the actual date?
June 5th.
Okay, thank you. And then the one after that, we have 2 more after that.
Yes, September and December.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Keith. Very informative as always. For our BSP 3, I know it's still just wrapping up phase 1, but I do remember, just remind me, I know like all the coastal cities and even some of the bayfront cities kind of had to raise their hand and say, yes, I want it, or yes, I want to help be part of this or participate and maybe give a little funding. Did every coastal city say yes to that, or did any decide they don't want to really be involved?
So I promise, Courtney, I won't steal your presentation.
Oh.
But to answer your question, Mitch, yes. So all the jurisdictions wanted the Regional Beach Sand 3 project. All of them participated. They signed an MOU with SANDAG and they funded it. So the entire funding came from the cities.
All right, very good. We are going to move on to our next item, number 4, Regional Beach Sand Project 3, Phase 1, Draft Preliminary Planning Activities Results. Courtney Becker is going to present. There she goes.
The chair is very low. Hi, welcome. My name is Courtney Becker. I am the planner here for Shoreline Management. Also here with me today is Chris O'Day, who's on our consultant team for the project. And I'll have to reorient myself. The screen isn't right in front of me anymore. So as Keith explained, what the Regional Shoreline Monitoring Program is, that program has collected over 28 years worth of data, which has shown us that regional beach nourishment projects typically need to be performed on 5 to 10-year cycles in order to maintain the width of our region's beaches. And what better way to show that is from these two images above. If you look at the top photos, those were taken in June of 2014. On the left, it's at Grandview, on the right, Oceanside Boulevard. Fast forward 10 years at those same exact locations, also in June, the beach is virtually gone. So because of this noticeable erosion, and like Keith mentioned, it's been 13 years since the last regional beach sand project, we were directed to initiate another one, which you might have just seen this slide above when Keith presented. SANDAG developed 3 phases to initiate the project, and I won't go into too much detail since you just heard about it, but just know phase 1 will be completed in June, and then we'll move on to phase 2 and 3. Shortly after we initiated phase 1 for the preliminary planning activities, we were reached out by the cities of Dana Point and San Clemente to ask to participate in Regional Beach Sand Project's report. They identified that we know we've had 2 successful regional beach sand projects in the past, and they also pointed out that they are cities located within the Oceanside littoral cell, which is the same littoral cell many of the North County cities here are participating in the study. And let me take a step back. A littoral cell is a self-contained compartment in which sand circulates. So understanding that adding more sand to the entire littoral cell will be beneficial to the entire region, as well as understanding that if we can align to seek grant funding for another regional beach sand project, it was advantageous for us to also include them into the phase 1 studies. And now on to the much anticipated draft results. So let's start with where the report has identified where receiver sites should be. Combining both cities of Dana Point and San Clemente with the San Diego region, the draft report proposes to place about 5.8 million cubic yards of sand. Yes. So when you tweeze out the San Diego region, we identified 15 receiver sites. So we took the footprints that were used for Regional Beach Sand Project 1 and 2 and altered them slightly based off of the current conditions of the beaches, if any other nourishment projects have been occurring since then, as well as taking in jurisdictional input on where best we should have these footprints be. With that it proposes for the San Diego region to have 4.3 million cubic yards of sand. And just for perspective, that's about 3 times the size of what Regional Beach Sand Project 2 was. For Orange County, there were 3 proposed receiver sites with 1.5 million cubic yards of sand proposed to be placed. For the economic analysis results, our consultant took the methodologies that our federal partners use to create a benefit cost analysis. And because of that analysis, we're able to generate a benefit cost ratio. And typically the benefit cost ratio being above a 1 is considered a cost-effective project. For the results of Regional Beach Sand Project 3, combining Southern Orange County and San Diego, The benefit cost ratio is at 5.7, which is well above a 1, being considered a cost-effective project. If you want to pull out the San Diego's BCR alone, that is 8.3. And essentially, the report estimates that by nourishing the 15 beaches in San Diego, it will generate $1.6 billion over the next 10 years. And I pulled out this quote because I felt it was important that you all hear it here today. It's also in the report as well, but the report concludes that there is a need to maintain San Diego's beaches to sustain its economy. That is pretty impactful when we're considering doing another regional beach sand project. So as Keith explained, we have done 2 past regional beach sand projects, and so there were many lessons learned from this. I only pulled a few out here today, but there's several others in the report that it goes over. But the most important ones I wanted to review with you all here today is the report discusses how can we expand the longevity of nourishment projects. And lesson learned was identified to have coarser grain sand, as fine grain sand wipes away quicker. To design the footprints to be more narrow and long rather than short and fat to also maintain that longevity of sand. And lastly, to nourish in the late summer rather than in the early spring or winter to avoid El Niños, atmospheric rivers, as well as reduce costs in biological monitoring. The next is to develop a programmatic approach to doing these beach projects. As Keith also explained earlier, stole my thunder, they were performed as one-off projects, so when funding became available, not when the need became present. And so by having it be a programmatic beach nourishment project, we, one, can reduce costs by doing a programmatic environmental document and permits, but also replenish the beaches before it becomes a dire situation. The report also goes into exploring ways that we can have a hopper dredge here on the West Coast. As of right now, a hopper dredge, most of them are located on the East Coast, which is the most expensive part of Phase 3 construction because it has to travel down the East Coast, through the Panama Canal, and up to the West Coast. So that being the most expensive part. The report goes into what would it look like if we were to purchase or have a long-term lease on the dredge, as well as to seek what would it look like if we had a dedicated dredge on the West Coast to reduce that travel cost. Lastly, the report goes into what would it look like if we were to install a sand retention device in an appropriate location to retain sand for a longer period of time. And now an appropriate location is defined as somewhere where it has poor beach fill performance, where it essentially never holds sand even when it's put on there. So the report goes into what would the possibilities look like if we were to do that. And now for the cost of Phase 3. The estimated cost for both San Diego and Orange County for Phase 3 construction is at $260 million. There are 3 main factors for why this cost is particularly high. The first being the amount of sand. As I mentioned, we're proposing to put 3 times the size of what we did for Regional Beach Sand Project 2, so that alone just raises the cost. The second being inflation. There's been a significant increase in inflation since 2012, and the California Construction Cost Index has increased by 178%. So just the sheer amount of cost for materials and work has also greatly increased. The last main reason is you might notice under the contingency, there's a 41.5% contingency. That is particularly high. As of right now, it's difficult for us to project what an appropriate contingency percentage would be. But as we move forward into Phase 2, we will be able to refine that number and thus reduce that number to reduce the cost. We want to make sure that we align with what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers uses as a contingency percentage as well. So we recognize that the local jurisdictions cannot pay for this alone. This needs to be a state, local, and federal cost share. So what are we doing about it? The beginning of this year, we applied to the state's Division and Boating of Waterways grant opportunity to fund the entirety of Phase 2, asking for about $5.2 million. We will then be notified if we were successful in this grant application in the summer of next year or their fiscal 27 work plan. If awarded, there will be a 15% match component, non-state match component. For phase 3, we also began to have conversations with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to incorporate this project into their already existing Encinitas and Solana Beach coastal storm damage reduction project. That project right now, they bring a dredge out here, happened last year. San Clemente, Solana Beach, and Encinitas all received sand, and then the dredge left and didn't nourish anywhere else. So we have submitted a letter of intent to have SANDAG be the local sponsor to incorporate, to begin work to incorporate into their work plan to start doing the San Diego and Orange County investigations. WRDA had authorized the work in 2024 for this to begin, and now we need to find the funding. If we can find the funding to put it into their work plan, then they will begin to have the investigations to begin this work so that we can have this cost share alleviated from the local jurisdictions and put onto the entities. It is our hope that if we, that we can use this, if awarded the state funding for phase 2 as the matching funds for what the Army Corps of Engineers requires to begin the investigations of that work. And now for next steps after today. So as Keith mentioned, after the meeting today, I will be releasing the draft feasibility study and economic analysis report to all of the working group members and affiliated staff for review. We are proposing to do a 45-day review period for all of the participants to make comments and or revisions. And then once we receive all those comments, I believe it says Monday, it's actually Thursday, May 15th. That is when, if you can send them back to me, then we will we'll review and incorporate and refine the document so that the final report will be released in July. And I understand I threw a lot at you, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. A lot of good information there. Michael, do we have any public comment?
We have one virtual public comment. That's Matthew Caulfield.
Very good. Matthew, you have 3 minutes.
Go ahead, Matthew. You're self-muted. Matthew?
Okay, I'm sorry. I was muted. I'm Matt Caulfield, member of the board, Save Oceanside Sand, which advocates on behalf of Oceanside residents to restore our shoreline. First, I want to thank you for our BSP 1 and 2, both very successful projects. We were hoping for the same with RPBS 3. We were surprised and disappointed to discover that there is a recommendation in the receiver site for Oceanside to, quote, shift the receiver site north by approximately 2,000 feet. My first thought is why? Why play with success? The second is that the recommendation would exclude 2 of Oceanside's most cherished and sand-starved beaches, Buccaneer and Cassidy. I could go on, but let me state as forcefully as possible that we strongly recommend against any move north. We know our residents want it moved south, and for RBSP 3 to cover Buccaneer and Cassidy Street beaches, as was the case with RBSP 1. We know it works and would return beaches to sand-starved South Oceanside residents. No one deserves it more. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Do you have any staff comments?
I can address this. So as part of this, Courtney mentioned that there was 15 beaches being proposed for nourishment. So what staff has done with the consulting team is we weren't trying to presume what the jurisdictions want. So we worked actually with the jurisdictions and said, where do you want the sand and how much do you want of it? So specifically for the city of Oceanside, we have the opportunity to work with the city of Oceanside staff and say, what makes the sense for the city of Oceanside specifically? So that's where those footprints came from, specifically from the jurisdictions. We do have a draft period right now for that regional beach stand 3 project for the jurisdictions to re-examine where those footprints are. So the city of Oceanside can look at the footprints and make changes if they so desire. So that opportunity exists right now, and it's when you recap the report, you'll have the opportunity to look at those areas.
All right, thank you. Do we have any member comments? Mr. Ehlers?
Yeah, I think I have questions first. In particular, I noticed you used Grandview, which is the one area that was not covered by the USACE. But when I look at the report, I was trying to figure out, I think the only comment I see about Luqadda is the placement of RBSP 3 would be 700 feet south. And I'm trying to understand, would RSBP 3 cover Beacons and North? Or is it moving south from where it was for RBSP 2 or 1? Another.
Let me start off and then give Chris O'Day a chance to add in. Chris O'Day is from Moffett Nichols. They're our consultants who are the coastal engineers. So right now, you're right, Mayor Ehlers. If you've seen the regional beach stand 2 project and the Army Corps project, there was no inclusion for that northern Luqadda Grandview area. We know the sand travels south. Right now, if you go out to the areas that were nourished in Beacons, it's all gone south. So we need a fill site somewhere in that northern Luqadda area right by the state park up there. And I think that's what's being proposed. So you do a fill up there, and as it travels south, you have that connection with the further areas.
Okay.
And let me just make sure that, Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was going to kind of mirror the same thing. Yeah, the idea is so you place it so that it stays in the area longer. So with that southern transport, you have it kind of feeding areas similar with the Oceanside footprint. If you have it north of the site, then that predominant transport will push it south.
Yeah. And so on page 25 of the item, I guess it would be page 25 of the PDF, the comment next to Luqadda says shifted south approximately 700 feet. I presume that's from RBSP 1. And so it sounds like you're shifting it south where you're saying we should shift it north so it does come south. I'm confused.
Yeah, I think you have to look at it as a whole. So because you have all of these different placement sites, you kind of have to look at each one and then the entirety of the project as a whole. So with Bataquitos to the north, that plays into sand moving south and then shifting Luqadda.
So elsewhere in the report, it says that I think it talks about the USACE project, which just completed, and that started, I think it said a couple hundred yards south of Beacons Beach. Beacons is a semi-active landslide area and really needs to have its toe covered in sand to help support the beach and reduce the likelihood of further failure. Likewise, north of Beacons, all the way to Bataquitos, we've had no sand put on because back in the USACE study, apparently the economic justification wasn't there back then. It should have been, but so my interest, and I just want to be clear, is my interest is if our participation in here, we would prefer having sand Beacons north to Bataquitos and fill that gap because we're on a regular program to every 5 years do the other part 200 yards south. So it does us no additional good. In fact, it does the greatest public benefit and probably the greatest economic benefit to put it north, especially since we just built, in the last 5 years, a new beach resort at the north end of Luqadda. So I want to give direction, feedback that we look for ways to put sand from 200 yards south of Beacons all the way to our northern border at Bataquitos.
We can take that direction and work with the coastal staff up there in Encinitas to adjust that footprint.
Yep.
And that's what you said is the next steps, is this is going to the cities. And so you can make all those comments. So that'll be great. So thank you for that. All right. Any other comments? Yes.
Hi, this is Ron. Can I take us back to Oceanside for a minute, especially from the Save Our Sand public comment? First of all, I'm a little surprised that Oceanside would ask to have sand placed farther north rather than farther south, the city I'm talking about. So I think that needs some clarification. Further, for Oceanside and for the other subcells between Oceanside and La Jolla, I compliment Courtney on her presentation and her overview, but she didn't have a lot of time to talk about the literal cell concept. The literal cell concept is a quite old one. It's 80 years old or so. There have been recent refinements in that may have not gotten into the literature or into the publicly accessible and consultant accessible space yet, but they should. And in particular, the Oceanside cell has northward transport almost always over the past at least over the past 25 years at the north end. This has to do with reversals of the sand transport in each subcell around the river mouths and the lagoon mouths. So the literal cell concept is a little bit more complicated, due to advancements in wave science, particularly by a guy named Bill O'Reilly at Scripps, who many of you may know. And so, that should be taken into account. And it's the same story with the core, the regular core dredging of Oceanside Harbor, which is placed way too far north to do much good because it almost immediately just moves back to the north. It's also partly a seasonal problem, because the dredging is generally done to benefit the summer boating season so people get in and out of the harbor. But those two things together, the wave science suggests that sand should be piped much, much farther south, not only to benefit the southern half of Oceanside where it's basically sand-free now, it's just all rock revetment, but also as an economic thing to make that sand less mobile and easier to get back into Oceanside Harbor at a much more rapid pace. So I'm sorry to take so long, but this is crucially important that we use the best available science, which may or may not have, gotten into the consultant or the public information space yet.
Thank you for those comments. And Ms. Seabury.
I wanted to ask, the hopper dredge, are those Army Corps owned? And we would bring it to the West Coast? Is that who owns those?
No, they leased the hopper dredge.
Oh, okay. So there's no possibility, if it was 20 million, over $20 million, the dredge cost, is that to bring it over and the cost of running it for the
That's correct.
projects?
Yeah.
So what is the cost of one? Is it cost effective that the West Coast would own one?
The report goes into that in detail. There was an analysis performed on, is it more cost effective for us to have a Southern California dredge or a West Coast dredge that we all participate to pay for, as well as what would it look like if we were to purchase a dredge? And the report goes into some detail onto that, and then has a recommendation to do a benefit cost analysis.
And then when the time frame of the beaches that need more sand replenishment all the time, the dredge would sit, or would we be able to lease it out to someone else to use, more Northern California mid?
To clarify, in the scenario that we lease one and have it on the West Coast, is that?
Right.
Yeah, theoretically, it would work like that. We have one sitting on the West Coast and, the need comes up, or it's been every 5 or 7 or 10 years, it's time to come back to Coronado. It's time to come back to Imperial Beach, and it would travel, and it would thus have a travel reduction cost.
I see on page 6, you were speaking of the map there. It never included the redheaded stepchild of Imperial Beach of getting any sand, did it? No.
My apologies, I don't have it in front of me. The map of
On your number 6 here?
the receiver sites. Yes. It shows
put that
that the
slide up?
receiver, I'm sorry?
Should we put that slide back up?
production,
Yeah,
quick
that'd be
slides.
great.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, shows that the receiver site for Imperial Beach is the one closest south above
Right,
the
and
border.
So all these dates we talked about for the north coast of San Diego, when would Imperial Beach be come up for their sand?
We would be performing this at the same time. So it would be our goal to have, when the dredge is out here, to nourish all of the receiver sites. The borrow sites for the North County would be coming from SB1, I believe is what it's called, and it's up in the north. And then for Imperial Beach and for Coronado, it would be coming from the Mission Bay Littoral Cell. I think it's also MB5 is the borrow site that it would be coming from. So the dredge would come and it would nourish, it would work systematically. So it wouldn't all be done in 1 month, but it would be working where it would start either in the north and then work its way down.
Let me just add some things to that because I don't want to have any confusion. So all 15 sites would be done at the same time. And whoever wants to participate, it's a voluntary program. Whoever wants to participate, they participate and they pay for the amount of sand they put on the beach. So the more sand you want, you pay more. And so that's the focus. If Imperial Beach and the rest of the 8 jurisdictions want to join, then we have a big regional beach sand project.
I have some information that Scripps did a study in 1970, and it had that that the Tijuana River, but when it flowed, it supplied 655,000 yards of sand naturally. And if we restore the river, the Tijuana River, could it not restore it naturally and cut some of these costs down?
So what you're talking about is sediment budgets. So historically, pre-construction, pre-industrialization, all the sand came from the rivers, moved out to the beaches, and during the big winter storms gets pushed out on the beaches.
Right.
That's historically. We've seen over the last 30, 40, 50 years, a loss of that historic sand replacement. You put more concrete down, you put more non-able to get the sand coming into the rivers, that's what happens. So what you're asking for is, can you restore the Tijuana River to reflow natural sand? And probably the answer is no, just like you couldn't do that with Oceanside or Dana Point, because you have too much concrete and construction already. So this is where the beach nourishment comes into play, where you take the sand that's offshore, which isn't being used for anything, and you move it onshore.
Well, I beg to differ because our Tijuana River, the original river was diverted, and the original river is clogged up with invasive plants such as Orindo and that the berry one, or I forget the name of that, but they're so prolific, they grow so thick that nothing's going to come through unless you do eradicate that. And that would help with the sand flow, again, natural sand flow, if we cleared the river and put it back to the original flow that it was. They diverted it completely.
Yeah, thank you for that, because that's kind of what we're going to do with those policy updates.
Can I chime in
Dr. Flick,
here?
let me just finish this one thing up first. Dr. Flick really wants to, and I said, well, we're going to be doing that, looking at that as part of the policy documents that I talked about, updating them with the current sciences. So you're seeing those over the next year as we kind of take those 4 documents, look about what's updated science and what potential future opportunities there are.
Because all of us, all the beach towns, they're all different, you know, and Imperial Beach is a very unique little 4-mile square town, and that we are surrounded by so much estuary as well. So I think there's a lot of natural places to get it, as well as Pond 20. You've heard of Pond 20? Well, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Dr. Flick, did you have something to add?
Yeah, of course. There, I always do. Yes, there are natural places to get sand. And as Keith mentioned, the best ones are offshore. The big problem with the rivers in the entire Southern California region is the dams. There are flood control dams, and mostly in San Diego, I think exclusively in San Diego, they are water supply dams. In other words, the reservoir dams like Lake Hodges that have essentially cut off most or even all, certainly most, more than half of the natural supply of river sand to our beaches over the last 100 years. And this goes for all of Southern California, all the way up to Point Conception, basically. And certainly in the the far southern part, LA County and San Diego County most clearly. This was documented. I wrote a paper 30 years ago that you can all read, and this documents this in great detail and quantifies it. So the answer, and I would point out the Tijuana River Dam is in Mexico, right? It's the Rodriguez Dam in Mexico, and that's what cuts down most of the flood flow. There are other factors going on here, and that's these long-term 20, 30, 40-year climate cycles, where, for example, if you're in a drought and rainfall decreases over 20 or 30 years, then it doesn't matter if you have dams or not. If there's no rainfall, there's no floods big enough to bring sand to the beach. So those are the major factors. Keith is right. If we're gonna get sand to put on the beaches, the best available is offshore, where it's not as so plentiful as to be a non forever resource in great quantity. Good quality beach sand offshore, where it's available to be dredged with the current technology, is only in certain spots. It's not like you can vacuum it up, economically, just anywhere offshore. So there are technical complications to this that are important economically. And I would also point out, if there was a permanent dredge on the West Coast, it would mean West Coast. It wouldn't have to be employed solely in Southern California. It could work all the way up to Canada. Well, maybe not in Canada. They probably wouldn't let it in now, but at least up to Washington. They also have occasional dredging issues. But this is an engineering question about how to get one of these things out here. As far as I know, they're all private. I don't think there are any publicly owned, by the Corps of Engineers dredges, to answer that previous question. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Ms.
I'd like
Lieber.
to comment on what he said. So the Rodriguez Dam was built in between 1937 and 1941, and the Scripps report was done in 1970. So of the 650,000 cubic feet of sand coming in, that was a report done after the Rodriguez Dam was put in. So the Rodriguez Dam had no effect on that amount of sand coming into the beach.
Very good. All right, lots of good comments. Mr. Malcolm.
Thank you. Yeah, just to back up Councilmember Seabury, actually, when the facility was put in, the diversion facility at the border, that's what primarily diverted the Tijuana River. And that was more recent. That was when the International Treatment Plant was built in 1998. Couple questions on the cost. You have a hard cost of 160 million. I'm assuming that cost is based upon when the project is going to happen. That's not today's dollars. So that's a projected cost into the future when the project's going to happen. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So based on that, I'm a little concerned because jurisdictions, as you've said a couple times, have to opt in or out and decide whether they want to do that. When you've got a 41.5% contingency of $75 million, that's a huge number, and that makes it very difficult for jurisdictions to know whether or not they can be in or out. So how are we going to get more granular on that cost to, let the jurisdictions know, more tightly what their cost is going to be?
So as of right now, this is all just estimated. So as we move into phase 2, it can, people can opt in or they can back out, similar to how it was done for Regional Beach Sand Project 2. Initially, the report, there were more people involved or more cities, and then some backed out, and then which left just 5 cities, from my understanding, for Regional Beach Sand Project 2. So we are working on getting that grant funding, and then there's no commitment to stay in the study if we keep moving along or we can refine the amounts of sand to reduce the cost as well. It isn't a hard commitment to what you wanted to do as we move into phase 2, but as we get closer to phase 3, that's when we'll be making those refinements on if everyone will be participating, what would the footprints actually look like? Are we going to be nourishing everywhere? As of right now, this is the feasibility study gives a footprint for like the ideal scenario, and then that's the cost that is projected out for that.
Okay, I appreciate that answer, Courtney. And by the way, thank you for the presentation. I think my question is more based upon, as a developer that puts together pro formas for a living, 41% is an enormous, I've never seen a pro forma presented with 41% contingency. First time I've ever seen it.
I can address that.
Okay, so, yeah.
Normally, when we're doing planning studies, this is very high level. This is in the 200,000 foot level. The team puts in the contingency. As we move forward into realizing, this is just to get an idea of where the world is. As we move forward with any project, let it be a sand replenishment project, let it be a transportation project, we start doing more detail engineering. And then the contingencies start going down. Normally in a project study report, we're talking 30% contingency. Then when we go into a project report, we're starting to talk 10, 12% contingency. And then when we go into design, we take it down to even 6% contingency. Because of the unknowns, we hired to do a planning study. It didn't take a lot of the details, and the devil's in the details. So that's how they put it out there. This is just the broad strokes to get an idea of what their possible range could be. As we keep diving in more into the more detailed studies, we start taking it down because we start knowing more.
Okay, appreciate the answer. So hopefully as we move on, we'll see that number come down. Just one question. In your lessons learned, you talked about coarser sand sticking better. So I recall from my days back on the original sand replenishment that we talked an awful lot on the board about grain size, color, matching, so the beach looked right. That was really a hot topic back 20 some odd years ago. So if the lesson learned is that coarse beach sand sticks better, are we moving away from trying to match the beach to trying to have sand retention on the beach? But then what does that look like when you've got different sand on the beach? So I'm just trying to understand how that lesson learned actually gets applied in practice when you're planning the project.
My microphone died for a second. No, we're still sticking. It needs to be compatible. It needs to match what the beach is. We can't have some, I believe some of the beaches had red sand and it was pretty discolored. It still needs to fall within those parameters, as well as it needs to fall in the parameters for the permits required for this. But the lesson learned was just identifying that if we can find compatible sand for those beaches that is coarser grain size, it will last longer than having the fine sand that just will wipe away the next time we have an atmospheric river or an El Nino year, which seems to be becoming more frequent as climate change is occurring over the years.
Great, thank you. And then just one final comment. So the Port of San Diego is working on a mitigation bank in Pond 20. It was referenced by the council member, and we've identified about 150,000 cubic yards of beach compatible sand within Pond 20. So as we move forward with that project and planning that wetland restoration, we're going to want to coordinate with your team, and hopefully coordinate with this project on how to get that sand to the beach as well, especially because it actually reduces our costs. It's a very short run from Pond 20 to the beach. So, yeah, thank you.
Very good. Mr. Ehlers.
Yeah, I had the same question about the contingency, although I found the 41% oddly specific. And I know you said it was a 200,000 foot level estimate. I think maybe you meant 201,000 foot,
Probably.
So was there a reason for the 41, not 40, not 50, not,
I can address that. And the details are in the report. So we were actually working with the Army Corps of Engineers who are doing the same effort right now. They're looking at future beach nourishment projects. They have a 38% contingency. And so why is it so specific? We can bring that back to our consultants. Why isn't it 40? SANDAG at the beginning stages, we'd use about a 40% contingency in the early phases.
Okay. So So a little windage on your 40% is what it sounds like it was. On the, what's my other item? Late summer placement, Courtney. A couple questions about that. We're talking about potentially having a dedicated dredge. Regardless, we're only getting one dredge. Late summer is a very finite. I remember from the USACE this last year watching, we had San Clemente, they had operational issues, actually delayed Encinitas. I kind of figure you have more here. There's more. Late summer, it seems like there's not enough late summer in order to do it all. Secondary comment that I would make about late summer, of course, is tourist season. And we want to be very careful of the very economic benefit we're trying to derive. We don't want to take out key beaches. I suspect there'll be certain jurisdictions that won't want to be late summer, because late summer is when the water's warmest. You know, we've always done it when the water's cold and nobody's in the water anyways, or very few people are down at the beach. So can you comment on the late summer placement in duration, timing, dredge usage levels? Is there enough time to do all this, and economic impact?
Yeah, so I want to clarify, the late summer is a pretty ambiguous timeline of what we're talking about. So it could be anywhere between July to October, essentially. And the lesson learned was because back with Regional Beach Sand Project 2, the placement, the dredge had to come through the Panama Canal and it was delayed. It was supposed to come earlier in the spring, but it ended up being done in July during the tourist season. But what we found was it actually reduced a lot of the biological monitoring costs, where we don't have to do bird surveys or grunion monitoring per se. So we were able to reduce the cost greatly by doing it then. So that's why I proposed that was a lesson learned to do it in the later summer. Another aspect is if we put it in the later summer, then the sand can stay a little bit longer and get settled into the system before we have another rain event or atmospheric river that would just essentially just wash it right back into past the depth of closure, where then the sand won't come back up onto the beach.
Okay, I think that's something we'll need to further discuss, right along the lines of the grain, color, and sand. I grew up in Chicago. I'm forever ruined from the sand out here. It's such higher quality than the river sand you get in Lake Michigan. And, it's just, I can't go there anymore. I'm sorry, when I go visit family and friends. So let's see, last item would be the discussion of augmenting or adding to the USACE program that Solana Beach and Encinitas are engaged in. Sounds like an awesome idea. I want to make sure, obviously, be a little parochial here. I want to make sure it doesn't negatively impact what is already in place. Any comments on this is a huge amount of sand. And I remember when we just went through the USACE, the borrowing pit up by San Clemente, the quality wasn't there. There were too many rocks, and they actually had to curtail it. What happens if we run out of quality available borrowing pits with this size of project, especially going to all Southern California?
So the report has a dependency on specifically the borrow site and what is estimated to be there and how it pertains to the amount of sand that we're requesting. So from my understanding, the dependency goes into detail that there is enough sand to do this. The cities of Dana Point and San Clemente would be using the same borrow site that U.S. Army Corps of Engineers end up having to change to, which is up near Long Beach, and then that would come down to their cities. And we have different borrow sites, the one in the Mission Bay littoral cell for the South County, and then the one up in the Oceanside littoral cell for all of those receiver sites. So it will go into detail that these sites will be replenished, and that it's estimated that there is enough compatible sand to perform that. And I don't know if I addressed the whole question. If you can repeat if I didn't.
The which question?
I don't know if I got all of that. Was that everything that you asked?
I think so. I just wanted to raise the sensitivity here too. We don't want to broke what took
Oh,
20
yes,
years to get
absolutely.
in place.
I had lost my train of thought, sorry. No, so we don't want to negatively impact what we're currently doing. So as I mentioned, the Army Corps of Engineers is going to start their own investigations. So they would be doing their own study with their own recommendations and or what they would propose to do. So if we get far enough along with the communication with the Army Corps of Engineers and of course, communicating to the working group periodically, where we are, we're going to propose a few different options. So it's not like we're stuck with working with the Army Corps of Engineers. We could move forward and do something like we did similarly with Regional Beach Sand Project 2, where we continue to do grant funding and seeking grant funding to then fund it like we did. I'm pretty sure it was 80% was funded by the state with Regional Beach Sand Project 2. So if that's the path that everyone here would have us like to pursue, we would then pursue that as well. But we aren't committed into necessarily having Regional Beach Sand Project 3, what we've already done, be concrete and stuck with the Army Corps of Engineers path forward.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of good comments. It sounds like we're kind of in the initial stages and lots to do. So thank you so much. All right, let's turn to the city of Oh, Mayor, sorry. Mayor
Thank
Sanchez.
you. No, I wanted to comment, thank you very much. I wanted to comment on the hopper dredge because we have really been advocating to have something like that. With our experiences with Army Corps in our annual dredge, sometimes we don't get as much because they, as Mayor Ellers indicated, they have trouble getting through the Panama Canal. And so I think it would really be critical for us to have something like a hopper dredge on the West Coast. Been talking about that for years. And maybe we can partner with the Army Corps, like not, since they rely on these hopper dredges that are on the East Coast, that they not have to do that anymore. And so we could possibly talk about cost share of that lease or purchase, whatever it is more economically making sense.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I really think that we should continue to make that happen because it sounds like it would make a lot of economic sense. And
maybe we can
and
put that on a
ours is usually
future
spring.
agenda item.
What was that?
We can put that on a future agenda item, maybe
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
kind of explore that.
I'd like to
Absolutely, and I just-
amplify. Can I amplify Mayor Sanchez's comment real quickly? There's another good reason to have a dredge here, and that is that beach science suggests that more frequent, smaller nourishments are much more effective than much bigger, greater interval. I don't know if that's worked its way into the consultant's report. I haven't read it yet. But that's another really good reason to have a dredge here, so you can do less sand more often.
Yes, very
Yeah.
good.
And I just wanted to add, as Keith mentioned earlier, there's the SCSC, the Southern California Sand Collaborative. That is something that group is specifically looking at, since it is a collaboration group of the collectives of the West Coast, talking about how can we get a dedicated West Coast hopper dredge out here, and what would that look like for all of us?
Great. Okay, very good. I think we'll get moving to the last item, the City of Oceanside's pilot sand retention project, Re-Beach, and Jamie Timberlake is here from the City of Oceanside.
Chair, I'm sorry. I just have
Oh, yes.
two questions. I'll be very brief. I know
Okay.
we're kind of going really fast. Really quickly. Excited for the new report. I did have a question, or maybe just a comment to put into the conversation. Some of the largest swell events recently have been, I guess it's not that recently, maybe it just sticks in my head recently, but like Hurricane Marie, our bigger hurricane events are in the early fall, which would fall right after the late summer. So I'm just curious, you probably don't have it, and I'll look for it in the report, but I just want to put it in the record that that's a really significant swell event that, I mean, it would be the worst luck in the world if we dumped all of that sand and we had our Hurricane Marie come in right after it. I think that would be just to thought about. So those swell events are just something to consider for the timing. Second, the mayor on the hopper dredge, I think we've talked about that a lot. And then the placement, just for folks that are thinking about Oceanside, I know we're about to go to Oceanside specifically, but the placement of our BSPT 2, we do have lessons to learn out of that. I think that's reflected in some of the shift, recognizing that it wasn't as successful as it could have been probably because it was disconnected in where it was placed before. Not placing it at the mouth of the low mounted creek is one of the considerations as well. And I encourage folks that are really interested to send in their comments, but also remember, we're going to continue to connect to the best possible science we have. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next item. And Jamie is presenting virtually? Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I can go ahead and share screen, or if anyone wants to pull up my, there we go. There it is right there. Okay, great. Well, my name is Jamie Timberlake, and thank you for having me today. I'm the Coastal Zone Administrator for the City of Oceanside. And I'm here today to present an update on the Rebeach Oceanside Pilot Sand Retention and Sand Nourishment Project, which is the city's coastal resilience and sea level rise adaptation project that aims to lessen beach erosion and adapt our coastline to future sea levels. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to present on this important project, which can serve as an example for not only the rest of Oceanside's coast, but for the region. So Oceanside has this chronic erosion issue that you've been hearing about for several decades now. And we've been experiencing that since the Camp Pendleton construction of the Camp Pendleton boat basin in 1942, which really blocked a major natural source of beach sand, which is the Santa Margarita River just to the north of our city. So since then, a number of dredging and sand placement and beach nourishment projects have been undertaken, yet the city's beaches south of the pier continue to suffer, with most beach areas only accessible in the lowest tides of the season. So the city is proposing to replenish beaches south of the pier with the Rebeach Oceanside pilot project, which will place approximately 900,000 cubic yards of sand and then retain some of the sand with a novel artificial reef and headlands. And so that's the overall project that I'll be talking about today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the city's Rebeach initiative, it stemmed from scientific and visual observations of beach loss, from community encouragement to address this beach loss, and then from policy initiatives guided by the Coastal Commission that aim to address vulnerable low-lying areas. From all these inputs, the city determined that the first step to address these issues was to launch a feasibility study that would identify immediate deficiencies in coastal management that we could readily address, and then determine a suite of possible solutions for long-term beach erosion. So the 2020 feasibility study concluded that a high-quality source of sand should be identified and a beach nourishment program developed to provide more consistent sediment supply to the coast. And then also that the beach nourishment program should be coupled with a sand retention mechanism that could assist with retaining some of that sand on the beach. As you know from the Shoreline Monitoring Program and discussions today, Oceanside is not the only coastal city that's having a hard time retaining sand, but we are one that feels it most chronically. So in 2023, Council approved a contract to pursue the recommendations offered in the feasibility study, which is by and large to design, permit, and implement a pilot sand retention system. Next slide. So to find a new sand retention tool, the city held an international design competition in summer 2023, which gave the city an opportunity to see what kinds of sand retention solutions were being used out in the world that we could borrow from other communities that were already dealing with similar coastal stressors. So the 8-month-long final design competition hosted 3 competitive design teams coming from New York City, from the Netherlands, and from Australia. And these final competitors were given initial design parameters for the competition, which really just came directly from that 2020 feasibility study. So we asked these design teams to design a sand retention feature that would restore and maintain sand on the coast while increasing the efficiency of any and all sand nourishment efforts that the city, SANDAG, or the federal government may carry forward. And since Oceanside has this hard time hanging on to sand, which has been shown in that shoreline monitoring program, we need to not just place sand, but permanently change the topography of the coastline so that our sand nourishment efforts can be sustained. So of these 3 designs that were brought forward, the winning concept design that Oceanside is now planning for its shoreline is ICM's Living Speed Bumps design, which mimics an innovative and implemented reef system on the Gold Coast of Australia. Next slide. So throughout the design competition, each design round culminated with a presentation to the public at a public workshop. These were all very well attended. The public comments that were gathered at the workshops informed the designs of each of the design competitors. And the information that we gathered at these public workshops, it continues to inform and guide the project design development. Even this morning, it was guiding me on how to create an advisory group for the remainder of the design of this project. So we expect to continue to involve the public throughout the entirety of this project. Next slide. Aside from public workshops, we have also been doing a fair bit of regional stakeholder outreach. So highlighted on this timeline on the bottom are a few of the touch points we've had with the region, either directly through invitation to your city council or commission, or through the Shoreline Preservation Working Group or Sediment Management Technical Task Force. So again, thank you to SANDAG for providing us this opportunity to provide continual regional coordination. We've been working closely with SANDAG since the initiation of ReBeach, not just for the opportunity to do this regional outreach, but also because understanding and testing of sediment management devices in the San Diego region has long been a goal of SANDAG's. So the piloting of a sand retention or sand management device is widely discussed in the 2001 Sand Retention Strategy and the 2009 San Diego Coastal Regional Sediment Management Plan, which Keith described earlier today. And these planning documents, these policy guiding documents, actually guide the Shoreline Preservation Working Group work plan in part. So both of these SANDAG adopted policy documents indicate that Oceanside is an excellent place to pilot a sand retention system that the region could learn from. So as Courtney previously discussed, Oceanside is asking that our ReBeach project be acknowledged and supported by the Shoreline Preservation Working Group as the region's pilot sand retention project. Next slide. So what is this retention project? The figure here shows the preliminary concept of the Living Speed Bumps winning design, which we now just simply refer to as the ReBeach Oceanside project. So this design is based on an implemented project on the Gold Coast called the Palm Beach Reef Shoreline Project. There are 3 sediment management devices that will be used to retain placed sand. And currently we estimate that approximately 900,000 cubic yards of sand is needed to pre-fill this location and south of it as well. So 2 of the constructs will be located on the back beach and act as headlands, which is the area shown as item A. And this will help stabilize dry sand beach space. And then the offshore areas shown as item B, an artificial reef will be constructed and placed roughly 900 feet offshore, maybe about 40 feet of water. And this will provide some energy dissipation. Both the reef and the headlands are supplemented with nourishment for the design life of the structures, because the idea is not to pointedly grab sand from the littoral cell, but to retain some of the placed sand and increase the longevity of sand management activities. The 2 headlands, the artificial reef, and then the sand nourishment altogether represent the entirety of the pilot project. Next slide. So over this past summer, the project team analyzed various layouts for the headlands and reef in each of these 3 shoreline segments south of the pier so that we could determine where to site the ReBeach pilot project. A multi-criteria analysis decision matrix was used in assessing the siting, which allowed the project team and the council to evaluate these comparable metrics in each of these locations. And ultimately, public input and the results of the criteria analysis led the City Council to unanimously agree to cite the pilot project in segment 1. But just like this pilot project can yield lessons learned for the region, we also expect to utilize the information and best management practices gathered from this specific effort in segment 1 to potentially implement iterations of this design in other areas of Oceanside's coastline, like in segment 2 or 3. Next slide. So this is a basic visualization of the pilot project in segment 1 with the submerged, maybe chevron-shaped reef providing some wave energy dissipation in the project area. With high wave energy dampened by a reef, sand can be expected to fall out of suspension on the lee of the structure and then develop sandbars. And then these sandbars can help sustain and accumulate sand in the nearshore area before it's lost to deeper waters or canyons. And then that allows the sand to eventually make its way back onto the beaches during periods of lower wave energy. So in this way, this artificial reef mimics the benefits that would be provided by a natural reef. Next slide. And then here is a preliminary visualization of the headland looking north from the southern terminus of the project area at Wisconsin. This headland will help to stabilize the sand that we place on the back beach through our sand nourishment program. The headlands are expected to provide additional community benefits like enhanced recreational access and improved marine safety options. Next slide. And so with the siting decision made this past fall, we are now working on refining the design of the reef and headlands to the specific location. The numerical modeling being performed incorporates current shoreline conditions and then answers questions about sand quantities and specifics about the reef and the headlands, like their shape or the layout between the two. And then in addition to numerical modeling, we are working on partnering with an academic institution to perform physical modeling of a scaled reef, which would be performed in a wave basin, and then it would depict how the waves break around the reef. To advise the design and then substantiate the modeling, we'll be forming technical advisory committees and regional work groups. And then over the past summer, we wrapped up an offshore sediment investigation, which we were very fortunate to receive approvals for an oceanside offshore borrow area. So this sand is located outside the depth of closure, off the shore of Oceanside, and it's going to be used for the initial pilot project construction and then for adaptive management needs in the future. Identifying this local sand source that we can access using a dredge that comes annually to the Oceanside Harbor allows the city to add more sand readily to the shoreline. And this adaptability is key to the local and regional success of the pilot project. Adaptive actions like adding more sand to the beaches, that will be established in an adaptive management plan, and that plan will be based on monitoring. So baseline monitoring is happening now and will continue for the remainder of the project design phase. That baseline monitoring establishes baseline conditions prior to implementing the pilot project that we can compare against to see the success of the project. Next slide. And so here's just a basic project timeline. We're currently concentrating on numerical modeling and design refinements, as well as ramping up the baseline monitoring. We recently deployed an acoustic device that will refine our understanding of currents and sediment movement in the project area, and it'll help calibrate our models. We are also doing internal discussions about the headlands and the features that they'll support, and we'll have public workshops on this element coming up this summer. And then, as depicted here at the bottom, City of Oceanside is committed to continued local and regional outreach and coordination throughout the project. Next slide. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for the invitation to present on our project. The Oceanside Coastal Management Team will be hosting a tour of the future Rebeach project site on May 6th from 9:30 to 11. There's a draft agenda of that informational meeting in your agenda packet. So please consider coming up to Oceanside to check it out. The harbor channel dredging and sand placement operations will also still likely be happening at that time. So that could be of interest to see in person. And then if you wouldn't mind, I'll get some snacks together. If you could just RSVP to my email if you plan to attend, and hope to see you there. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jamie. Super exciting to hear more detail. Are there any public comments, Michael?
We have one public comment from John Tenalgio online.
Very good. John, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, thank you for the time, SANDAG Preservation Group. My name is John Tenalia. I'm a lifelong resident of Oceanside, and I'm also on the board of SOS Save Oceanside Sand. I wanted to echo some comments that Matt Caulfield on our board made earlier. But before I do that, I wanted to point out to the group that RE Beach is an entirely separate project, obviously, from the proposed RBSP3. And I mention that because different design, different permitting, different funding. If by chance RBS3 never gets funded, and given the price tag, it's obviously a huge task for you folks, RE Beach can still stand on its own and still be put together and put in place on our small section of our beachfront. The challenge is that I know SOS is opposed to this receiver site being pushed north because we have a 3.7-mile shoreline, and everyone in South Oceanside during RPSP 1 and RPSP 2 were benefits of receiver sites that were sent lower towards the south. So I'm sort of in disbelief that the recommendation at the staff level would push this north and drop it right on RE Beach when it represents less than 15% of our shoreline. Now, I know SANDAG folks, this is, you have no say in that. This is a city issue. So my comments I would direct now towards Mayor Sanchez and Councilmember Joyce. The two of you, of course, are two of the 5 council members. You have the power to affect change and move that receiver site south. And I would respectfully request that you do so and not forget about those of us in South O. So thank you for your time and good luck going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. Any member comments? Very good. Mr. Joyce?
I'll just say
Deputy Mayor Joyce, sorry.
It's all good. Joyce is good. Just we're excited. I'm happy that Jamie was able to share with us. Obviously, the mayor and I are here together. We're excited about what's moving forward, and we look forward to partnering, hopefully with SANDAG, to make this the pilot project.
Very good. All right. Okay. We made it in time. So thank you, everyone. Oh, one more comment. Mr. Silverstein.
Sure, I'll keep it brief. Thanks, Jamie. Good to see you, Nick. I had a question, just because there's a lot of talk about coordinating all these different sand replenishment efforts and timing. You know, Mayor Ehlers raised the points about, you know, is late summer a good time for tourist season? Courtney mentioned there's a lot of permitting about, you know, grunions and birds, and there's those constraints too that you just can't do it at certain times of the year. And then Deputy Mayor Joyce raised a point of, well, is late summer the best time if you're going to have a huge swell right after? And all the climate science says that these big swells like we've had in 2023 and 24, I think, yeah, are going to happen more and more often, 10 times more often by 2050, if you listen to NOAA. So I guess my question is, when is the best time to do it? You know, whether it's RBSP3 or Rebeach, in a perfect world, like what do you think would be the best timing to do it? Maybe we're talking about Rebeach, so let's stick with that at the site that's been chosen. Thanks.
I'm happy to take that, Jamie. Or
Yeah, if you'd like me to answer that. I mean, ideally, we would want to place it in the fall. And that's mostly due to the fact that we have grunion that cause issues with construction timing throughout the summer. And so ideally, we'd want to do it right outside of that grunion season and right outside of that tourist season. But your point is well taken that we'd be putting it right before the winter season. But, you know, I do want to add that like these types of projects add benefits that sometimes they get eroded away, but sometimes that means that whatever that beach sand is protecting did not get eroded away. So if we end up putting a big effort out, we put a lot of sand out and we do this big nourishment project, and then a winter storm takes it away, well, it probably could have been worse if that wasn't there.
Very good. Ms. Seaberg.
Jamie makes a good point. It would be worse if you didn't have sand on and a big storm happens to come along. I would add two things. One is that long-term, medium and long-term weather forecasts are much improved. So we can do 5 to 7 days. We also do 3 to 4 months ahead of time. It's the space in between that's not so great. So there would be, it's not perfect, but there would be some limited warning that the following winter would, in the fall, the following winter may be more or less severe than normal. So, that might help. But again, this also supports the notion that you should nourish with less sand more often, because then it doesn't matter so much. If you nourish every other year with, a little bit or half the sand that you would put on every 5 years, then the consequences of having a storm hit right after your 5-year nourishment, your big nourishment, are much less, much less drastic. Plus also that reef, would help, and the structures themselves would help. So, there's a bunch of stuff. You can't, you can't have any absolute guarantees, especially with storminess likely to get worse, sea level going up, and all the rest of the climate change stuff that, of course, we all know it doesn't exist. Right now it's been legislated out of existence. I'm joking. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Seabury.
Thank you. In Imperial Beach, we get our biggest swells in late summer because it's the Humboldt current coming up from South America, and it happens every year. And so that's something to consider too. The Humboldt current is coming up the whole west coast of both our continents. So,
well, it's actually from behind Antarctica, behind New Zealand. The swell occurs in our late summer because of the severe storms in the Southern Ocean. So those swells literally travel halfway around the world. They pass us and go all the way up into Alaska. So yeah, that's true. But those generally, those swell events generally do not cause massive erosion. It's the North Pacific storm waves that come, depending on the size and intensity of the storms and the direction that they come in. In Southern California, we're sheltered from much of Northern California, the North Pacific storms. But when they move farther south, which they're also projected to do as climate change accelerates, then those are the storms that actually cause our major beach erosion issues.
Very good. All good comments. All right. Thank you. And with that, I think we are adjourned. Our next SPWG meeting will be Thursday, June 5th, 11:30, right here in West. Yay, did it.